Everything's on. Welcome, everybody. It is 6 p.m. and as chair, I'm calling the Finance Committee meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody to our Finance Committee meeting this evening, dealing principally with the final operating budget, capital budget, and warrant articles that have warrant articles with financial implications. And I'd particularly like to thank Michael Canales and his department head staff for all their efforts in the development of these documents, as well as the support and input from the select board and everybody here on the Finance Committee. Thank you for your continued interest, input, and participation in this process. Really, it's very important. We've got a great group and we're most appreciative of it. I'd like to go on and say the first item, we have two sets of minutes to approve. The first set that I sent to you was March 30th. You'll recall that that dealt with our independent auditors report, the draft auditor's statements, the management letter, the letter to the board, and also dealt with elements outstanding in the budgets. Are there any comments on those minutes?
I move their approval.
I second.
Okay, that's a first is Jim, and second is Pam. Any comments or discussion? There being none, or anybody opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I abstain.
Were you absent at that meeting?
He was
You didn't
absent,
ask me that. I just abstained.
but it
Just
says
kidding.
here you were on
I
vacation.
wasn't here either time.
Okay, so then you have to abstain.
That's right. That's why I abstained.
So 6, yes,
It says you were on
vote.
vacation and did not attend.
Abstain, absent from,
You don't have to explain.
no, I have to know what I did. The second set of minutes is 413. You'll recall that set of minutes dealt with the fire department. There was a joint meeting, and there were really three issues that came up at that meeting. The first was the reaffirmation of the purchase of a fire engine, which was approved last year. We had budgeted 750 and another 250. We thought we'd get a grant. We did not get the grant, but it was still approved. And the select board reaffirmed the purchase of that, the specs for it, and going out on bid. That was the first issue. The second issue was additional staffing on another person full-time for the fire department to fill the vacancies not filled by volunteers. That person will be on a contractual basis annually or a little more than annual to be negotiated by management. Obviously, we're in discussions with more of a regionalization of the fire department, but we need to have, there are a lot of if, buts, or ands. We need to have coverage in the interim. That's the second issue. The third issue was turnout gear. We had originally budgeted $65,000. That is fire protection gear. That went up to $90,000 because we have more volunteers. We had 18, it's up to 25. So basically, that's what those minutes dealt with. And then we recused ourselves. Any comments on those minutes at all?
I move their approval.
Second.
And the second is Ed. Any discussion? Okay, there being none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Abstain.
He's abstaining because he was absent.
Oh.
Okay, third item. Let's talk about the operating budget, okay? The proposed budget for fiscal year 24, okay? And basically, what I thought I would do protocol wise is go through the document and then ask section by section if there are any questions. We'll go through general government and then we'll approve we'll give our approval to the entire draft document for presentation to the town. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Okay. Under general government, I will reiterate what we've talked about in the past. There has been budgeted a cost of living increase of 2.5% for the employees of the town, including general government. And also, you'll note that some of our employees under general government, i.e. Erica and several others, have assumed additional duties, and therefore there is salary increases for those duties. And some of the expenses have gone up for our employees based on the need for training costs with the assumption of these additional duties. That's number one. Did you have a point?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said across the board, everybody got 2.5%?
Yes, isn't that correct, Michael?
It's,
No.
collective bargaining is 2%. All non-union are 2.5.
Non-union 2.5, union of 2.
Okay, because that was my question earlier and at a previous meeting, and someone had asked for a larger raise because of their added duties, and they weren't getting a 2.5%, which I thought was not right. Is now that position now getting a 2.5%? Because if she's not, then we need to not say that across the board.
All right, so that is correct that under the town clerk did submit for an increase of 6,500, which was placed in as her request. And she did submit a letter explaining why she had asked for that. So what I did is just put in her request for her overall pay increase. So, yeah.
Okay, can I move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear that it
Okay.
wasn't across the board.
You are correct.
I'll put down 2.5 cost of living with a few exceptions.
Thank you.
Okay, not a problem.
I just-
All right, next.
didn't think it was fair.
There is a reduction on the selectmen's expense line, a reduction in legal fees of $37,500. There's also you'll note a reduction of 22,181 town facility salaries. There is a reduction in the Glendale solar maintenance expense. And basically, all told, general government had a reduction over fiscal year 2023 in proposed 24 of 15,263. That is the proposed general government annual operating budget. Any questions, anybody? So I can move on. Jim?
Well, I have a question, and it's just for clarification. Under electric, town offices, all the things listed there, don't we have a solar system that was supposed to begin to lower our electric costs? And if so, what's the status of, what are we receiving in terms of reduced electrical costs?
So your electric would cost more than that if we were. So what happens is we still have to pay for the electric credits that we receive from the solar. And what you do is those are bought at a reduced rate. So I'd have to go back and look exactly what that is, but it is a reduced rate. So you buy the credits, say for $1 credit at 80 cents. And then we use the credits to pay our bills. It saves you roughly 20 cents on the dollar. It's somewhere in there that we're paying. So it doesn't eliminate the bill, it reduces the bill. So even though you see electric, we're either paying for the electric itself or we're paying for the credits that we receive from the solar farm. So it doesn't just offset. It's not behind the meter where it just offsets the cost. We buy the credits and then we use them to reduce our overall cost.
Just an aside, one of the articles here deals with an aggregation of electricity, one of the warrant articles.
Yeah.
Would the town be eligible? Would
Well,
that-
we go out and buy our
You bid.
electricity anyways.
Okay.
So, but we could take advantage of that in the future.
Okay.
But right now, the town does go out. We use Constellation and to lock in the rates. So our rates don't go up and down on a 6-month period.
But the aggregation article is really to allow Stockbridge residents to.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, residents and businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
Anybody that doesn't
Right.
lock into a long-term contract. Right. Yep.
Okay, if I can move on, can I move on? All right, public safety. There are increases in the police salaries vis-à-vis contract. Police expenses increased, vehicular maintenance, fuel costs, et cetera, equipment costs. Fire salaries, we talked about the additional position, fire position. Fire expenses, again, maintenance of equipment. And we have aging equipment in the fire department, and fuel costs. And you'll note also the building inspector salary line increased. You may or may not be aware of the fact that Ned Baldwin will be retiring May 1. And that we had an introduction at the joint meeting after we had recused ourselves, or rather before we recused ourselves, of the new interim building inspector. So that's the section on public safety, an overall increase of 149,000. Moving on to education, Berkshire Hills Regional School Assessment. The operating assessment has increased 153,000. That's very usual in education, increased salaries, difficult to get teachers. The capital budget assessment has reduced 11,000, almost 12,000. And you'll note this year we've got an out of school vocational tuition of 80,000. We have several students that will be attending technical school, Taconic Technical High School. Okay, we have to pay for that. We have to pay for an education. That's pretty fixed. There isn't a lot we can do. We are fortunate. I don't want to tell any tales, but we do have two people on this committee, both Bill Vogt and Steve Schatz, involved with the regional school district, either from building or operations and so forth. So any questions on that piece? Okay, moving on. Public Works, the salaries have increased 31,000. Salaries and expenses, equipment expenses for water and sewer. Obviously, we'll be coming to a point where we've got to develop people for ultimate change of leadership should any of our senior people retire, so that's what we have there. We've got a great crew working in the water and sewer area. Any questions or comments on that? Human Services, next one. We have an increase of $10,000. That's for part-time staffing for the farmers market, okay? And we have budgeted salary for the Council of Aging staff, okay? That is budgeted part of Human Services, okay? Moving on to Culture and Recreation, we have an increase of 19,000 for tourism. That's the chamber, and also there is support of the library, an increase $16,000 there. Okay. You will note, this is a good thing, debt service, there's 350,000 reduction, 35,850 reduction, both in principal and interest for this building, so that we're drawing down on the debt on this building. And also the water treatment plant, principal and interest, 66,000 for the two of those. Those monies are coming from stabilization excess. Is that correct, Michael?
Yes, last year we set aside $1.2 million in anticipation that one of these years the school would come out in 24, 25, and 26 to pay it off. The schools, by the time the debt hits, it's going to be past that. So, you know, the decision, the select board is interested in taking the stabilization, just paying down this building now, save the taxpayers for the next 3 years instead of just leaving the money in the stabilization account.
Georgia?
So I have a question on that sewer debt. Usually there's an article to take part of the sewer debt out of sewer available funds, and I didn't see one.
And the water treatment plant one wasn't. So when you built the water treatment plant, that you haven't taken that out of.
Right, but the sewer debt was like 75-25. In the past, there's always been a sewer debt article, and 1 year it didn't happen, and then the next year they doubled it up.
That is for, if you look on,
I thought there was,
so the sewer, so the ones that have debt, if you go to the debt sheet on your capital budget, you can see that the sewer expansions
Right,
were done at 75-25. But the sewer treatment plant, the original one 20 years ago, that was water treatment plant that was done.
I'm sorry, I meant
Has not been in the 75-25 split ever before that
the
I
sewer
saw.
extension, I'm sorry, I misspoke, but I'm just saying the sewer, where does that show up on the warrant articles to
It
take
didn't,
out of?
because it never has. It's always been picked up by the town. The original water treatment plant ones were never brought back to the sewer and water. Only the expansions were that I've seen going back a number of years.
Right, there was one that was forgotten back in
Right, we corrected that.
2017 or 18.
Yeah, we corrected that, and those are now, the sewer expansions now paid.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, if you scroll down, that was paid off last year.
Thanks.
So we don't have the sewer expansion anymore.
oh, all right, okay,
And the sewer department is paying directly, they're paying, yeah, so the sewer
All right, I'm
expansion
sorry.
have been paid off.
okay.
yeah.
I was just looking at the wrong year.
okay, anything
Sorry,
else?
I just wanted to be clear on
We
that.
can move on. Basically, debt service is reduced FY '24 over '23, $411,000, just about. And that's terrific with respect to containing the tax rate. Next category, employee benefits. There is an increase of 16,000. That's our contribution to the Berkshire County Retirement Program. And anybody that's got dental or health insurance, that's going up all the time. So there's not much we could do about that. Jim?
Yeah, what's the undesignated compensation figure?
Undesignated compensation, and you can correct me, Michael, if I'm wrong, is typically money set aside for people that retire, that we are unaware that they have not planned a definitive retirement in the
Or even
future.
people that plan, so we know that we're gonna have
Right.
one this year.
Right.
And we're also.
We had
gonna have
one last year,
next
too.
year, And from the highway department.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, retirement.
Okay, so therefore, the bottom line here for this operating budget, the increase with education is $73,638 over fiscal year '23. So What is that? It's like a
1.3%.
1.3%.
When you get everything added at the end, if you go back to our assessments, so our assessments are up from the state, our local income is down, so the overall impact to the budget is 1.3%. When you take everything into consideration, this is only 0.65 by itself.
Great job.
Any further questions? May we have a motion to
So
approve?
moved. So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. All right, that's that piece. Next, bear with me, I got lots of papers here. All right, we're gonna go through right now the articles, if you will. And I think what has happened, Michael, in the past is the moderator asks if the finance committee supports or does not support each of the articles. So I think we don't need motions, I don't think. We'd have to just take a vote on each one that we cover, okay? Is that all right, Michael?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we talked about the Berkshire Hills Regional School, Article 5. We talked about Article 4. We approved those. Article 6, this would be to raise,
That's the school.
that's a
one.
capital, yep, we've approved that. Let me just make a note to myself. This is the, 670, yes. Article 7, the Taconic High School, the 80,000, we've talked about that. The stabilization monies of 1.1 million, that we talked about that, to take down the debt of the town offices as well as the water treatment plant. Any issues with that? Okay, if I hear nothing, I'm going to mark 7-0 yes. Article 9, zoning sign regulations. This is really not a financial issue. I'm not sure we need to address this. Michael, do we need to talk?
Typically you haven't.
We have not typically, okay? So I think we'll pass over it, non-financial. Article 10, cemetery bylaws, that's the same issue. And Article 11, this is the residential inclusionary development. To the best of my knowledge, that article has been approved both by the select board and the planning board. Michael, is that a correct statement?
Yep.
Okay, and I think that would be brought up at the town meeting for discussion. I don't think there's anything that we have to add here relative to financials related to that. Obviously, it has impact on the ability to develop property, but that's got to come up at an open meeting, and we don't take a position on that here. Okay, Article 12. The first one is transfer $100,000 for proposed paying interest on the town infrastructure projects by Article 7, the annual town meeting. That's an increase in interest payments on $4 million that was borrowed in fiscal year 23. Anybody have, that's part of the overall program, so
Right, if you remember, we authorized a $4 million borrowing last year in order to jump on the early interest rate. Even though we didn't want it to hit until this season, they ended up charging us an additional interest payment because we took it out so soon at the beginning and that. So this will be a one-time thing, and then the interest payments level right off with the borrowing.
Okay, any questions on that? Next one, 50,000 for the purpose of funding engineering for town projects, specifically for the Curtisville Bridge, Butler and Park Street bridges. Let me ask you, Michael, these are engineering studies. Is that enough money to do a study for those three facilities?
Yeah, it's going to get the work started that we need to get done in order to come up with. So the Curtisville is coming up with which course we're going to take. So
Because it is a historic
feasibilities,
bridge,
these aren't
right.
the full construction yet.
Right.
Then we go and look at whether or not they qualify for the small bridge program or what other programs they qualify for. The Park Street one is just an evaluation of the current conditions. And then, yeah, those are the major ones. The Butler is just if there's any work that needs to be done, painting, other stuff like that. So these are not full engineering, like for replacement, something like the Tuckerman. These are smaller projects.
Any questions on that one? That's number 2 under Article 12. Okay, then we all approve that 7-0 unless somebody says something. We've already talked about the turnout gear for the fire department, 90,000 for increased volunteers. Any questions relative to that? Okay. Number 4, transfer and appropriate. That is from certified free cash, 1.2 million for the funding of various road reconstruction and paving. And in addition to that transfer of free cash, there's also 854,000 from Chapter 90. So it's a little over 2 million that we're going to deal with road and infrastructure that you're working with highway on upgrades.
Yeah, originally I had a placeholder of 600,000, and when we went out and actually did the assessments with some estimators, yeah, the cost is definitely up there still. It's down a little bit from the high point, but costs are still high, and there's probably no expectation that it's going to come down anytime soon.
Anybody have any, Jim?
I just think for the town meeting, you should be prepared to list the names of the roads.
Yes.
Because that's certainly going to come up.
Yep.
I know several of them. We were talking about Larrawag, North Church, Prospect Hill. There's construction up there. Those are just a few to come to mind. But we should get Hugh to give us a list.
Yes.
Okay. Good point, Jim. The next one, transfer and appropriate 25,000 for costs associated with negotiations of rest of the river. As far as that goes, there's a lot of discussion on rest of the river. Lee has taken certain positions, and the other 4 towns are still in total support of the original agreement. So we need to budget this money, for legal fees as we move into next year. And it's we're not here to say the merits or non-merits of what GE did on Monsanto. Or that's not our bag.
Didn't we already approve this rest of the river?
We approve it every year.
Many times you've approved amounts.
Pardon?
You've approved since 2014.
Right, but I mean, I thought we just did it in an earlier meeting.
Annually. No, we didn't.
Okay, all right.
We discussed
I know
the
it was
figure.
discussed, yeah.
The figure.
Okay, so any other comment on that? No? Next one, transfer and appropriate 15,000 for the purpose of funding short-term rental tracking software services. That's for Airbnbs. Michael, you want to just give us 2 sentences on that?
Yeah, so we're just looking at doing a trial of 1 year to see about tracking using either GoGov or Granicus. They're companies that track who's doing short-term rental, make sure that we notify them that we have a local bylaw that requires them to register, and make sure that they're registered with the state paying their their percentage of their taxes. Try it for 1 year, then evaluate. We've only had a handful put in. The state has something like 90 listed that are paying, and yet initial look, one time peak was about 120 something. So, and that was during the winter, which is less than during the summer.
120 in Stockbridge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'll bet it's a lot more than that.
yeah, I would guess.
I think you're probably correct.
I have one question. On this tracking service, and you talk about how these entities pay tax to the Commonwealth. The tax is the room tax?
Yes.
And how do I ask this? To pay room tax used to be over a certain amount of rooms that you would be renting, and you would have to register with the Commonwealth and collect that tax. Under Airbnb, as I understand it, the Airbnb entity collects the room tax if these homeowners are listed, and then that room tax goes into the Commonwealth. That's a procedure.
I really don't know how it's done with the companies. I think there are services like that where you can take advantage of it like that, but not all of them do it that way.
So then how would the monies that would be the 6% that would be entitled to the town have the Commonwealth return that money to the town of Stockbridge? Is that, I mean,
The
it's up to
state
them.
collects it and then they
Yeah.
send it back to us.
Yes,
But by doing this, people would have to, if the company went on and they would send out the notifications to everybody that's listed on Airbnb, Vrbo, any of the ones that are out there, and say you have to register with the town in order to run your Airbnb. Part of our requirement of our bylaw says that you have to give us a certificate that you have been registered with the state. So then that would be a way that if somebody came in and tried to
Okay.
register
I
and they did not have the certificate, then we'd make them go get the certificate with the state.
I see. Okay, that's,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Any issues relative to
No.
that? Is everybody comfortable with that?
Jay, did you want me to walk through? Because people may notice this looks a little different than the way the warrant usually looks.
Which
This would be a good one to look at because I could show the whole thing on the screen to anybody watching. So,
Okay, well, basically, we've approved, we didn't sign off on 7 yet.
right, but that, if I could just walk you through how this is going to work at town meeting.
Yes, well, let me just finish 7 and then you can walk us through the whole process.
All right.
Okay, 7 is the appropriation of $73,400 for a chipper. That's for the highway department. They need that, obviously, especially this year with all of the tree problems. So anybody have any issues with that? Okay, go ahead, Michael. Basically, you're going to.
Yeah, I didn't flip over the page on that. So what you see in front of you is, what we're going to do is, so if people remember, what used to happen is for all the articles, we voted everything individual. And then we used to vote the CPC as one single vote, either up or down on all projects. And last year we went to voting all individually, including CPCs. And if people remember at the town meeting, not last year, the year before, when we first did this, it was brought up about lumping them together again. And then we spent like half an hour trying to think of how we would do it. So what we've done, talking to legal and the select board approved this format is, this is a consent warrant. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna read Article 10. Somebody will make a motion, one of the selectmen, Article 12. They will make a motion to approve. The moderator will then ask if there are any holds. If somebody says hold number 2, then number 2 gets discussed separate and we vote on the rest. But if people are okay with the articles, then the articles can have a single motion and a single vote. But it does authorize people to just ask for a hold if they'd like to further discuss any one of these separately. And then what you do is you would vote on the rest, then you'd hold a discussion on the held ones, and vote those individually.
And then move on to Article 13.
And then move on to 13.
Got it.
So it could be a single vote to get to 13. Somebody could ask for a hold on every one, and then we're voting every one individual.
That's going to happen.
It could, or it's going to be a couple that are going to get pulled out.
That's going to
I think the one issue, and that's fine, but for the purpose of this meeting, I want to go through
Yep.
it so the committee is fully,
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I just wanted everybody to understand what the format
so that we're
is.
doing no surprises. Okay, Article 13, we're talking about, this is sewer surplus. The transfer of 260,000 to fund a collection management program for sewer. Transfer of 49,990 for sewer needs analysis project. Transfer of 36,500 replacement of sludge pump to the wastewater treatment plant, and 12,300 to overhaul the 3 raw wastewater pumps at the treatment plant. Anybody have any concerns, Jim? Rather, Bill?
On number 2, what's being analyzed?
This would be analyzing around the lake. It would be analyzing which are our next priorities after the I&I study. It's something that's been discussed. So phase 4 is actually the work that needs to be done to address the DEP I&I. The sewer needs analysis is determining what the next needs are after that. And then would allow sewer and water to begin prioritizing where possible expansions are, where improvements and other things.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay,
So these will be voted on together too?
These
same
will
thing.
be the same
Same idea.
format,
Yep.
together unless there's a hold call. Yep.
Okay, anybody have any other issues with these? Otherwise, we'll accept them as a committee. Okay, Article 14, again, these are available water reserve fund transfers, 30,000 for funding installation of new gate valves, 25,000 for funding engineering for Elm and Maple Street water main replacement, 23,000 for funding 3 new online analyzers for the treatment plant, and 48,000 for the purpose of painting the interior of the water treatment plant. Any concerns or issues?
Why do we need to paint the interior of the water treatment plant?
It's done
Is this
with
for
a-
aesthetic
No,
purposes?
no,
or-
it's done with a special
It chips, it chips, it needs to be maintained. Otherwise you don't want chipping going into the
And this must be
system.
special paint. This is a heck of a lot of money.
It is. So just to let you know that inside the plant, you can see where there's chipping and stuff. What happens is you end up with rust. So actually they come in and they actually
Break the rust.
and scrape, get rid of the rust, and then it's painted with a special rust paint. This is something you should be doing, every couple of decades. So it's getting to that point where it'll continue to elongate and minimize other costs
Yeah.
that would come from allowing this. to-
Okay, I think the other unpleasant thing, basically the cost of labor right now is extraordinary. This type painting, any mechanical or engineering type labor is out of sight right now. Georgia, you have?
So previously, they were asking for a new hybrid truck. That's off the table now?
The Water and Sewer Board did not approve that article to come forward.
Oh,
That was
okay.
a recommendation from the department heads, but the commission itself voted that down.
Okay.
Okay, anybody have any issues?
Elm Street and Maple are not going to be paved? If we're looking in replacing?
No, they are not being paid
Okay.
in this cycle. Yep, yeah, no, not when we're proposing possible work
Yeah.
underneath. No.
Anything else? Anybody have any objection to any of these?
No, just all the work that was done with the drainage system for that went through Elm and Maple, will that be taken into consideration too?
Well, we
Doing a
have
study.
a couple drops that are happening over there near the Elm Street Market and some others. So we need to figure out what's happening under there as far as both water, sewer, stormwater, all of that. So we need to, with an engineer, look at that and try to figure out what's going on.
Okay? All right, I'd like to move on to Article 15. These are all community preservation items. The first one is the appropriation of $50,000 for Riverbrook for a replacement of a fire escape. Okay, these have all been approved, as I said, by the Community Preservation Committee, okay? The second is the proposal for a sum of $15,000 for Heaton Court lighting, walkway lighting, okay? That's for the elderly on, just at the beginning of Prospect Hill. The next one is $125,000 to be used for the completion of the Pine Woods driveway. Michael, you want to make some comments on that, please?
Yeah, the CPC decided not to fund 3 articles that were all going to the Affordable Housing Trust that would benefit Pinewood. Pinewood requested, and the CPC committee voted to just finish the driveway reconstruction. They originally had two $50,000 ones and a $25,000 one, 125, which instead they're putting towards this one project.
I think I missed something at the very beginning, maybe before the meeting. There was a discussion of Pine Woods. Who owns Pine Woods?
It's owned by Construct.
Why are we
do not
paying
own.
why are we paying for this?
Because CPC funds can be used for affordable housing projects.
But have we asked Construct to do it?
They haven't done it.
I mean, why, have we even attempted to get Construct to pay for this or pay for a part of it?
We have asked, and let's put the driveway aside for a moment. As part of this whole effort, we've asked Construct to support an overall assessment of all the needs of Pine Woods, capital needs, so they could be categorized, and budgeted over a period of time. They did not choose to support that at this time, okay? So basically, whereas the driveway was in process, okay, we have previously supported part of it, we want to get this completed, okay? Future requests, we've got to have an overall assessment of the total needs of Pine Woods. Jim,
Haven't we seen that?
it's obsolete.
It
Totally.
was,
2 years old.
it was my understanding, they started the pave last year and I think they couldn't finish because of the weather. But it was my understanding that the amount to be paved had been paid for out of last year's funds. Is that not correct?
There were 2 previous appropriations of 75,000, which is 150. The entire project is 300,000.
Oh, okay.
So this remaining 125 will get the town's contribution toward the project is 275,000. Construct's throwing in 25,000. One thing that was discussed at the CPC meeting, since this is the 3rd time that we've had this with the driveway coming forward, is we are going to do what's called a grant assurance agreement. And in there, the CPC agreed that this is the last contribution toward the driveway, that any additional costs above and beyond what we would not be, would be at Construct's.
They have to sign that agreement before they get the money.
Before they get this 125,000.
Well, before they get to 125, but that means they sign it or it doesn't get paid, right?
Well, if they want our money to help with the paving, they have to agree that there's no more delay, any delays, anything else, costs, and that will be incurred by Construct. That we're not contributing more to this project.
And they're the ones that applied to CPC, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Next item, 20,000 for Heaton Court siding board replacement. The next one, 42,000. This is historic preservation purposes of the cemetery by the Cemetery Commission for restoration of the Sergeant tomb slabs.
What is that?
Those are actually the ones that sit on like pedestals. They look like tables,
Oh,
but they've all fallen. We think that some of them are actually, the legs might be under the actual pieces. So if you go in the cemetery, they just look like a slab sitting on the ground, but they originally sat like a table and they had pedestals underneath. they've a long time come down. So we want to look at the possibility of restoring those to the conditions that they were.
And are there many of them?
There's a hand, I only think there's only like 3 or 4. But
And
it's
it's the
got,
Sargent family,
I think so. I think that's,
as in Mission House Sargent?
I believe, yes.
Okay.
In other words, they were pretty early.
Yeah.
Okay, moving
It's
on.
very common to do those pedestals. The problem is they
don't
just,
last.
they fall over and then, yeah,
Get knocked over.
they are get knocked over, yeah.
Next item is appropriation for $185,617 for the historic preservation of the Waldorf School, of the old town hall, by the ultimately for the Waldorf School. That money will be used to put a roof on that building. And the end game is that the Waldorf School is interested in that building as their school facility. They will move their operations into it at a point in time.
They're not committed?
The problem is that they're finalizing the agreement with the church. So once again, these funds would only be transferred and there'd be a grant assurance letter issued to Waldorf School that would stipulate that these funds are only available upon the transfer of the property.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. $20,000. This is item 7 for open space recreational purposes to be used by Laurel Hill for improvements to the Mary Flynn Trail. $11,500 to be used by Stockbridge Bowl Association for work at Bullet Woods to preserve open space by removal of invasive species and required permitting. The appropriation from Community Preservation, open space and recreation purposes of $300,000 to be used by Stockbridge Land Trust for the acquisition of Fen Farm Swan property. Now, Michael, tell us about that. That's going to come up. That item, explain, give us a little more
So
detail.
the Swan property, there's a large acreage of land on Monument Mountain that's owned by the Swan family. It came up for sale. There's a current deed restriction on it, but it's one that's just a temporary one that's under chapter land and expires in a couple of years. There is a chance that this article might not happen because I believe there's negotiations with parties to have this sold with the town not being involved. The problem is we don't know right at this point if it's going to be needed or not. So this is going to town meeting. Recommended to go to town meeting as is. And if we find out that the town funds are not needed, if the town votes to take no action on this article, then the 300,000 would stay in the undesignated funds of the community preservation. If it goes for a vote, whether it's a yes or no, then the money gets locked into the open space and recreation portion of the community preservation. So there will be something happening at town meeting to move this forward or not. But it is to secure a large portion property. If the town does get involved and we use any CPC monies, then there would have to be a permanent restriction placed on the property. Deed restriction.
Okay, Bill?
Yep.
Number 10, appropriation of $11,917 to be used by the Friends of Gould Meadows for work at Gould Meadows to preserve open space, again, by removal of invasive species and improve the walkways and trees and garden work. That's pretty standard. Next one, community preservation undesignated fund balance of 5,200 for the Foot Bird Sanctuary property conservation.
Where's that?
That's by the dump, between the
That's what I
range
thought.
and
Right
the,
beside the transfer station.
And what do they mean by conserve? What are they gonna, I thought it was already conserved.
They want to just make some changes, my understanding, plant some trees along
Right.
the property line between the town
Prevent
building and
erosion.
the rest. So
Okay,
they have some ideas of things they want to do to conserve that property.
okay.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just,
Next one is appropriation of $3,875 to be used by the Stockbridge Library to repair a 19th century daguerreotype photo of Anson Clark of West Stockbridge.
Couldn't we find somebody who lived in Stockbridge to preserve?
West Stockbridge, you mean?
Seriously, what's,
It's one
what
of,
am I missing?
it's one of their holdings, so it's there and it needs to be preserved, okay?
I guess it's,
Had to have been donated to the library.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was sort of,
The next one is $10,000 for the CPC administrative budget. They ask for that every year. And the last one of these CPCs, reserve, historic, community reserve and open space revenues expected request of $44,310 for fiscal year '24. Okay.
For each category.
What's that?
So for each one, it's
Yes,
going to be,
per category.
right.
Right. Are there any questions on this section at all?
I have one.
Yes, Jim?
Back to number 7 on the funds for the Mary Flynn Trail. I just have a question. Does anybody know how long that trail is? What the length of it?
We'll have to find out. I
I
don't,
didn't know if anybody here knew it.
Thought it was like a mile and a half,
Mile and a half?
I think. I'm not sure.
Okay.
depends on if you go and then come back.
any other comments or thoughts on this?
Mile and a half.
There being none? Anybody object? Okay, we approve this one. This is Article 15. Article 16, I don't think there's anything we have to address here, right, Michael?
Nope, that is one that's both supported by the selectmen and the Board of Assessors.
And 17,
Same thing.
okay, and 18, abandoned funds, I'm not sure there's anything we need to do there.
I'll be prepared. I gotta ask Erica exactly the language to use when somebody asks exactly what do you mean by alternate procedures?
Right. And then the 19 is the aggregate electrical load that they're looking to aggregate to contain costs. I think that's worthwhile, but that's not something we need to address. Okay.
I do have one question on Article 18 about the abandoned funds.
Yep,
That would be eventually that would be money that we're disposed.
right. So sometimes we have funds, yeah, it's the abandonment of fund. It's not a budget. Are you thinking that you guys should act on that one, Georgia?
Right, I was just wondering kind of specifically what abandoned funds are that we might have in the
Yeah, wouldn't they
town.
normally be turned over to the state? Isn't the state the holder of abandoned funds?
I think that you have to adopt, and I will double check this, but I believe you have to adopt the procedures to disposal of the funds. If not, the funds just stay, they're just sitting in an account, and I think that I'll double check. I wasn't thinking I needed to be prepped on this one for this
Sorry.
meeting. But I know that at town meeting, I will be prepared to answer exactly what this does. But
Can you give us an idea before, when you find out?
yes, I can shoot an email. I'll ask Erica tomorrow to give a little explanation of exactly what this does.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and the next item, actually, the last item that we have here is the citizens petition to elect the finance committee. At this point, at this meeting, I would make just a couple of quick comments that basically the moderator has appointed an exceptionally qualified committee. Each of our participants on this committee has financial expertise and several of our participants are former ex-governmental employees and understand the process very, very well. That's point number one, that the moderator has done a fine job at this. The second point that I would make subsequent to this is at a January 26th Board of Selectmen meeting, Chuck Cardillo commented, and this is from the minutes, that the town, and I quote, has a very good finance committee for the last 10 years and is working really well. He recommends to leave it as it is and would not support putting this on a town warrant. Select person Jamie Minacci felt that as an elected committee, the finance committee would always be in flux and probably the select board could appoint. And she added that the finance committee was working well. And Patrick White made the statement that he felt the appointments flow from the voters, whether through the moderator, selectman, or by election. He did, however, support the appointment of the finance committee.
By the moderator.
So therefore, there was a petition filed, I don't know how many names, a handful of names, to bring this before the town meeting. This will come up. We will be prepared to make statements about our committee on things that we've accomplished as a committee and the backgrounds of our people. And I know in talking to the majority of the committee that we totally support the process as it is. Appointment from the moderator, people are screened, and we've got a great group of people. And I think that would be what I would say now. Jim.
Well, the only thing I'd like to add to your comment is simply they make it elected, that becomes a political body.
That's correct.
And I think that for 39 or 40 years, the town fathers were pretty wise in the way they set this up, so that an elected moderator appointed the finance committee. The finance committee advises the select board, so that since this town began, the finance board has been volunteers. They're town residents who volunteer their time and efforts on behalf of it. They're not elected politicians. And for that reason, whether it's said, I'm saying it now, but I hope someone will say that at the town meeting so that the voters understand the ramifications of moving a volunteer body to a political body.
There are two additional points that I would make, and not to belabor this, that their proposed warrant, their proposed petition does not detail the credentials of the appointees or if you will, those to be elected. And this is not a political body, as Jim has said. It's an oversight, independent committee that works in the best interest of the town residents and the taxpayers. That's what we do. We don't support any political party here. You can belong to any party you like. That doesn't come up at these meetings. So I would leave it at that at this point.
Can I also add something?
Certainly.
You mentioned that someone mentioned from the select board, I think, about the importance of continuity. I'm new to the committee, and the thing that impresses me about this committee is the depth of experience with the town that, I can understand
Absolutely.
the interest in having an elected committee. I can understand that. We all appreciate a democratic
Process.
approach to town management and whatever, but the experience, the longstanding experience that exists on this committee is really impressive. And I think that could be lost when it went to the vote.
Even beyond that, what has happened with other towns, with committees like this, nobody runs for office, okay? Nobody wants to participate for an election. It ends up the select board appoints somebody, and that totally defeats the purpose of what we're we're trying to do here as an oversight independent body of professional, okay?
The very fact that I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
The only thing I'd add to what Ed said is that I think it's important that maybe people skipped over what I said. There is an election process. There is a democratic process. By electing the moderator, our town
Right.
fathers were wise beyond their years, frankly. They elect the select board democratically. They elect a moderator democratically with the understanding that that person is going to appoint an advisory committee to the other political body.
That point.
I think that's, yeah, that's.
I think that's a good point to make.
I think that's the most important point that, in my opinion, that can be made. Once you start making the finance committee political, all things are on the table. And I think our volunteers have been concerned about one thing, and that is advising the select board as to their decisions that they make with regards to finance.
Financial
in the town.
viability of the town.
Exactly. And that's
Right.
our job. And since I've been on it and long before, going all the way back, when I first came on, there was Ray Blair as chairman, Gene Rousseau, those people. They all had the same agenda, and that was simply financial advisory board to the selectmen.
I think
Bill?
this is not an original thought. I think it was Joe Newberg in his letter to the editor made the point that if it falls to the select board to appoint a replacement, that replacement is inherently beholden to the select board.
That's what I said. Yeah, I said that in so many words. I thought I did.
You
I
could
agree.
expect an amendment to come on the floor. I don't know what the amendment would be, but anyone who's really thinking about that, if it proceeded that the selectman had to make an appointment, I think any reasonable person would say that's just not
That
the way it
defeats the
should
whole
work.
purpose.
Exactly.
You know, but more to come on this,
Yeah,
okay?
right. But we should be prepared to
To comment,
speak.
yep.
Right.
Michael, anything else we need to discuss at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay. The other point I would like to make is the annual, the Baby Town meeting, May 8th, that's a Monday at 6 PM. Any problems for anybody? 5/8, that's a Monday, 6 PM, and we'll basically go through this, and I'll talk to several of you about participating, you know, with some of the warrants going through that and the budget and so forth, so that we have committee participation. So, and then the week after that will be the annual town meeting. So I think,
I have one other,
Yeah.
if I may. I'd like to compliment, Michael, I don't know if it was your idea or the selectmen, but I really do like the idea of breaking the presentation of those articles into the segments that they did. Because there's an old adage that the mind can only absorb what the seat can endure. And we've all been at these town meetings and we watch people slowly, their seat gets tired and they get up and leave. And by the time we're into other articles, half the audience or half the voters have left. So I want to congratulate whoever came up with that idea. And because they still have the right to put a hold on them to vote. My question then is, if they put a hold on them, at what point, only because we've approved all these, does that mean it only takes a 50% plus one vote on all of these? Or if you put a hold on these, what happens if,
So the example I gave was under the free cash ones. So there's 1 through 7 are the articles. Well, there'll be a single motion made to pass all 7. Then the moderator will ask for any holds. If somebody says hold number 2, then the moderator moves to approve all but the holds.
right,
We discuss, vote on those. Then the moderator would entertain a motion to accept the hold, and then we go through the normal process. So if no holds are brought up, it's a single vote and you're done. It could be up to 7 votes if somebody was to hold each and every one of those free cash. So
but my question is, by using that hold on the example you used, when the vote is taken on Article 7, which has been held, is that still only at 50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still the normal voting procedure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I have nothing else. Is there anything else that we need to discuss, folks? And I'd like to thank you. And our next official meeting will be the Baby Town, and I'll be in touch with a couple of you about participating.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.
I move we adjourn.
What time is it? Second,
Second.
7:05.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Well done.